Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan N.S. Pierce. This is a US elections really quick and dirty update for you. A synopsis of the vice president's debate or vice presidential nominee debate that took place on CBS in the US last night. Okay, what's my TLDR? It's probably a score draw. We're talking about football analogies, soccer analogies. I think you had a shaky start. The first half, I think Tim Walz lost and he was a bit shaky. Tiananmen Square was an own goal. He flubbed an answer on that. He should have just said, owned up to, yeah, I got that wrong. I wasn't telling the truth or got my facts mixed up or whatever it was with the claim that I was in Tiananmen Square on this date and actually it was this date or what. Should have just said, right, bish bash bosh, move on, next question. But he spent like 90 seconds going blah, 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 blah. And that was bad. So from a debate technical point of view, like he was shaky, wasn't so good. But on substance, particularly in the second half of the debate, I think he won on substance. JD Vance was quite slick and he is your trained debater, if you like, in a way that by his own self-admission, Tim Walz is not and was not. So I think Tim Walz came across well to an audience who were trying to find out the sort of character that Tim Walz is without particularly knowing him. He would have come off like that Midwestern, affable, personable guy. Where JD Vance succeeded was, and I think Sam Cedar said it best when he said he wasn't as dickish as he is otherwise, type thing. So there are two JD Vances. There's a JD Vance who's probably behind the scenes, could be quite a normal, nice guy, maybe. Like when you go back to what people said about him when he was at university, he had diverse friends, etc., etc. But then there's a JD Vance that says anything he can in order to get into power. So saying one thing about Donald Trump and completely changing because that's his access to power. And saying pretty egregious things. Now, the one that came out in the debate is exactly what JD Vance and the Republicans needed, was the slick and also somewhat personable, not at least not unpersonable, right? So he actually came across better than he has done in all of his rallies. And he didn't say egregious things to the degree that he said them. Now, the criticism is that Walz didn't kind of haul him over the hot coals over that. Walz was a nice guy in the debate, whereas there were arguments before the debate that Walz should do that, shouldn't try and attack JD Vance too much because JD Vance is quite good maybe at deflecting and being in those kind of debate situations. But there's also the theory that that's exactly what he should have done. JD Vance has given enough ammunition for him to be hauled over the coals, and Tim Walz didn't. Neither of them landed the killer punch. So my opinion is it was probably a score draw. Will it shift the needle? No, not at all in any long-term manner. There are some saying, Anti-Scaramucci was saying that JD Vance has actually, the worst thing that's come out in the debate for JD Vance is that he would have performed fairly well and would have performed better than Donald Trump, and Donald Trump will not like that. This could lead to either resentment from Donald Trump towards JD Vance or Donald Trump demanding that he has a debate so that he gets the final word, which might end up going against Trump because he's not performing well in debates. So that's an interesting dynamic. But in terms of either of them really, turning the screw on the other, it didn't happen. And in fact, they both showed commonalities. They both agreed with each other quite a lot. Now, what's interesting is that's what it should be like, right? A debate should be about ideology and policy points and not about slagging the other person off. So on that front, this was a normal debate, and well done to both of you for being human beings. Like, low benchmark, but that was good. Now, I think there was a lot that JD Vance could have been done on. I also was pretty upset that Ukraine was not even. It wasn't a question from the moderators. But although on the other hand, that might be good because it then doesn't become a divisive partisan issue. But you've got JD Vance, who said some pretty egregious things on Ukraine. I think Tim Walz was quite weak on foreign policy, and that's how it began, Israel and whatnot. But he got better on domestic policy, guns, abortion, threat to democracy. Those things, JD Vance, I think, was weaker on. I think Tim Walz did better on, and that's what happened towards the end of the debate. So, score draw, etc., etc. What else? I think that JD Vance, if you're gonna metrics of success, right? JD Vance came into that debate with its insanely low favorability ratings. He needed to, and this is almost certainly why he very precisely was calm, collected, thanked the moderators, thanked Tim Walz, was kind of as affable as he can be, because he's trying to shift that needle up from -13 or whatever it's been, up to somewhere near, the zero line. So he's been sinking in terms of favorability. He needed to change that. So in that sense, that was a success for JD Vance. For Tim Walz, he's probably shifted that even further. He already had good favorability ratings. People like him. He's an affable chap. You came away thinking, yeah, he's an affable chap. The big one so MSNBC have got like Walz winning that debate, although he was a bit shaky, and the one on Tiananmen Square wasn't great, but he won the debate. And you've got Fox News almost certainly saying that he won the debate. You've got Anthony Scaramucci trying to be objective, actually working for the Harris-Walz campaign, saying that on a technical level, so from a debate technical point of view, JD Vance won that, but he's lost in terms of Scaramucci was the one that was going big on JD Vance is going to have some issues with Trump. Now, Trump is not going to like that performance. JD Vance called Trump his running mate instead of like his leader, his beloved leader, or whatever. Little things like that are going to annoy Trump. So there was an interesting dimension there. I would say a score draw. This is what is going to play a lot, though, and a lot of people came away because this was the end of the debate. This is what got a lot of people excited, upset, angry, etc., etc. It was JD Vance's refusal to admit that Biden won the election. Still, after all the court cases, after January the 6th, and this is probably Walz's best sort of answer, which is just a little chip in, was like, oh, that's a non-answer.
This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Yes, no.
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship.
This is one that...
And from my point of view, like this is really interesting view into JD Vance's technique, I guess. His mind is technique, though, which is, this is a really difficult question. Deflect. Asked by the moderators, deflect. He's like, right, I'm going to do a kind of, not a bait and switch, but I'm just going to switch it. You've asked me on January the 6th. I'm going to ask you back about censorship and stuff to do with Harris being full on censorship. And actually, Tim Walz did come back a little bit later and say, well, we're not the ones banning books, which is good. But again, that was just like, that could have been lost in the noise. That's a problem, and I think you will see that played over. That might be that might end up going into an advert or something like that, or be played a little bit. But then likewise, the Republicans will use the Tiananmen Square flubbing as well. But again, neither of them got killer blows. There was no okay. One thing that came out of the debate is that, so the claim was they weren't going to do live fact checking. That was what CBS said. And then it's very difficult, because when someone says an outright lie, you've got to go, well, that's not true. So there's this one thing where he was completely fact checked on the Springfield like cats and dogs things, as you would expect. And JD Vance goes, well, I didn't think we were going to be fact-checked type thing. I should have teed up the quote there. And you're like, really? You're going to call people out for fact-checking you? In other words, hey, I should be allowed to lie. I shouldn't be called out on my lies. And that to me was egregious. It's like, hey man, there are 3 things I hate. As JD Vance said, 3 things I hate. Men that don't wear eyeliner, bodily autonomy for women, and fact checkers. Oh, I hate you fact checkers. How dare you go around checking facts? Oh, come on, man. So that was I think, yeah, sounded whiny. There is a theory that Tim Walz was expecting JD Vance to come out and be JD Vance. The JD Vance that we've seen recently, much more aggressive, much more hating cat ladies and that kind of stuff. And JD Vance wasn't, and maybe that's partly why in the first half Tim Walz was a little bit shaky and a little bit, well, I was expecting to be having to come back at JD Vance in this way and that way for him saying this and that, and he's not doing that. And so the second half, he then gathered his senses, obviously worked out the strategy, and then went and took on this new sort of JD Vance, or this unexpected JD Vance. So there's possibly that element. Just a few things to pick up on. So I think fact checking, there was a problem there, and a few people have said, look, JD Vance just lied about a bunch of stuff, which is par for the course at the moment, unfortunately, with Trump and Vance. So here's just one fact check where JD Vance was wrong. Talking about manufacturing, this is Trump's manufacturing, and then since Biden took over, it's gone up 279% since he took office. So I think Vance was saying the down with Biden, up with Trump. It's just absolute nonsense there. So yeah, there are lots of people sort of fact checking Vance on some of the things he said. Where it's important, of course, is not about people who support Vance and support Walz or Republican, Democrat, dyed in the wool, not going to change. No matter the outcome of this, I'm not going to change my vote. Don't really care about you. Not important. The importance lies with the undecided and the swing voters. How are they affected? So this is interesting. So is Walz qualified to serve as president? Before the debate, 62% said yes, and after the debate, 65% yes. So he's gone up 3% with debate watchers. Walz qualified to serve as president if necessary. So actually, there has been a shift in people thinking that he's presidential. That's exactly what you'd want if you're Walz. I'd like to know the stats for JD Vance there. Now, this is worth listening to as well. This is just a little snippet from CNN.
Debate. And I actually want to start with overall impressions, guys, because all 7 of you came in undecided. 1 of you said they've made up their mind. Ryan, who are you going to vote for, and what kind of solidified that opinion?
Well, I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris. You know, one of the stark sort of aspects of that debate that really stuck with me was when they were talking about January 6th and how Mike Pence certified the election, and they were wondering if JD Vance would certify the election should Trump lose. And, you know, JD Vance didn't really give us a definitive answer, and I'm disappointed in that fact. And I don't think that I can trust someone, you know, with my vote if they're not going to respect it.
So debate.
And of course, the question is, was he really undecided before the debate? I mean, okay, but assuming he's telling the truth, then that's an interesting point. And actually, what you find, so why Vance is underwater with favorability ratings is almost certainly connected with, and there's a whole host of analysts that have talked about this, is that people can sense phoniness in other people, right? So you can sense that he's not genuine, that he's changed his opinion on Trump. He's on record, like the the JD Vance document that's been leaked. You go and look at that. You know, you've got Trump Oppo research into JD Vance that shows exactly who JD Vance is, right? and he's not someone to be trusted. And actually, his point there is really salient. Like, we have no reason to trust JD Vance because he's either like outright lied to us, and you can talk about fact checking, you can talk about cats and dogs and Haitian immigrants and all these lies that he keeps spurting. But the fact that he massively changed his opinion on Donald Trump shows that he either lied or he's fickle, or do you know what? He's not like really robust in his beliefs. And there's an element there, well, more than an element, that he is just phony. That actually he's supporting Donald Trump because that's his route to power. And it may be not about 2024, it may be about 2028 or 2032 for JD Vance is trying to line himself up for a presidential candidacy. People can see through that. And the objective fact is that there are polls on his favorability where he is underwater for his favorability. That's a fact. That is not an opinion. It's a fact of people's opinions, right? But it is factual that their surveys have been done and his opinion is -13, where Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are above water, both of them. Tim Walz particularly. I think last time I looked, she was +3, he was plus whatever in the teens, I think. So there is a big difference there in favorability, and that is a reflection of genuineness. That's my opinion, but I think most analysts generally agree with this, is that people are less favorable of others that they consider are phony and not genuine, and that will encompass lying and saying things that is being said for political expediency rather than because you actually believe it. And I think this talks to that. Right, further, the last point I'll make is here, another new polling shows voters absolutely love Tim Walz. Kamala Harris made the right choice to be her vice president. Actually, this says several things, though. So this is why I think it's a score draw. This pretty much says it all. So net favourable view of candidates. Before the debate, according to CNN poll conducted by SSRS, the favourability ratings of JD Vance even worse than I was saying the other ones, but this will be their particular one, not an aggregate. JD Vance had a -22 rating. That has shifted him, according to watchers of the debate by CNN, to a -3. So he's gone +19, JD Vance, in how people view him. That is a massive success for JD Vance. However, although JD Vance has gone up +19, Tim Walz has gone from +14 to +37. So he's gone +23 there. So he's actually come away from the debate more favourable than JD Vance. And yet both of them have come out much more favourably among debate watching survey interviewees here. So that to me tells, I think, the story that this was a score draw. You know, there is, had JD Vance landed a killer blow on Tim Walz, you would have seen that be a different result, and you would have seen these swing undecided voters be somewhat different. Like, only one person's changed their mind out of 7, and that is for Tim Walz. And that's the importance, arguably, if you believe him, that's the importance of that last question on January the 6th. And that's why a lot of people are talking about that last question, because a lot of people are seeing that as being one of the defining moments of the debate. And JD Vance lost that moment. And Tim Walz has come across as more presidential, but I'd like to see JD Vance's stats on that as well, because I think he's probably would have shifted upwards a little bit as well. I don't know if that's written anywhere. So that is that. So my view is score draw, probably not going to shift the needle, particularly with undecided or swing voters, a huge amount. It will introduce people more to Tim Walz and JD Vance, to be honest, for those low information voters. But how many low information voters will have been watching the presidential debate? Probably not many. So again, not going to do an awful lot. What both candidates can probably be happy about, both of them will come away thinking, well, I didn't totally screw that up. Neither of them came away having had their ass spanked and having a disaster. You know, Tim Walz will come away thinking, I flubbed that, and I wasn't strong enough, and I could have hammered JD Vance on a few more things, and JD Vance likewise could have landed some greater punches. He was slick enough, he was personable enough that he has shifted people's opinions on his favorability. But yeah, I don't think it's a game changer. Right. This annoys me enough that I want to just spend a couple of minutes on this, because this is freaking either massively irresponsible or massively disingenuous. This is CBS giving a debate graphic that basically is handing ammunition to Republicans and playing into the Republican narrative completely falsely. It's a lack of understanding of how maths works, right? So you have and as so many people have said, this graphic is a disgrace. Lots of people are luckily pulling this up, but this is going out to millions of viewers, right? State of the economy: grocery prices have gone up 21% since January 2021. Average hourly wages have gone up 3.8% since last September. So first of all, it's not like for like. You're comparing like weird, you're just randomly choosing chronology here. Just so that's weird. And also 3.8%. So like, I know this is hourly wages, but as an example, like 1% of $50,000. So say I earn $50,000, and I know we're talking about working class, but I'm trying to just explain the maths here. I earn $50,000. I earn 1% more than that, right? The next year. So you know that's a fair amount, or even if we're talking about this, 3.8% of $50,000 is going to, like a small percent of a big number, is going to affect an outcome, as in like how much money I've got left at the end of the month, more than a big percent of a small number. So although groceries are a meaningful amount of our budget, our wages, our income, that is interestingly getting smaller, as you know, if you compare what we spent on groceries as a percentage of our income back in the 1950s compared to now, it's a huge difference. Anyway, I won't digress on that. And this is hourly wages, so it is different. But the idea is that 21%, like if bread's gone up 21%, so it's gone up from like, I don't know, $1 for a loaf of bread is now $1.21, but actually I'm earning like 3.8% more on $50,000. So that's easily covering that. And the point is that wages have gone up for 15 months in a row now, is it? The average wage has gone up higher than inflation, because you don't calculate it in this kind of fashion, right? And that's just deeply problematic. Anyway, loads of people, luckily, genuinely a fireable offence. Why not use prices since 1972 versus wages since yesterday? 1 year change in wages versus 3 year change in prices. One expensive category rather than change in total expenses. For what it's worth, wage growth is also understated for a few technical reasons, an invalid comparison in every way. Little tricks like this are why public opinion is so far from reality. He says, this is just a blatant lie through incomparable data. So you can't even compare the data. From January 21 to July 24, wages rose 26.4917%. So it's just like, where are they getting that wage data from? They have outpaced inflation in nearly every state. Absolutely disgusting behaviour. The person responsible should be fired. So not only is apparently incorrect data, but it's also invalidly compared. I got a roughly 28% rise since 21. You know, chart crime. Man, this graph has some serious issues. Big percent of small number versus small percent of big number issue here. 20% of $1,300 per month. It gives you a grocery budget, $273. 3.8% of 115,000 family of four, US average income, $4,370. Wildly irresponsible journalism. Saw this live as well. Aggravating to call your viewers stupid like this. So on and so forth. Yeah, it's just be warned that you can be hoodwinked if you aren't being critical enough about what you see. It's very easy to be hoodwinked, and that essentially is the Republican narrative. They are basically handing that to one side, and that's why that's irresponsible, as it would be if it handed it to the other side. Just irresponsible journalism and irresponsible from CBS there. So anyway, that's enough from me. Hopefully that gives you a good synopsis. I haven't played too much of the debate. You can go and watch it all if you want. But yeah, score draw. Take care. Speak soon.